Fantastic. Well, welcome everyone to our meeting today. I would start with the first item on our agenda, which is call to order, and ask that the staff do a roll call and introduce staff.
Great. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Happy Memorial Weekend. All right, let's start with Senator Zolnikoff.
Here.
Alan Lloyd,
Here.
Senator Harvey, Senator Noland,
Here.
Representative Etchart, Representative Seconder, Representative Teal. Okay. Stacy Anderson, Tanner Avery,
Here.
Webb Brown,
Here.
Bob Dean,
Here.
John Harding,
Here.
Jennifer Hensley,
Here.
Sierra Reesberg. Oh, she just joined. I see her. And Gail Tronstad.
Present.
Okay. And did I miss anybody from the subcommittee? No. Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. And for staff on the call today, Erin Sullivan, Policy Analyst with the Department of Labor. We also have Jennifer Stallkamp, who is our Deputy Chief Legal Counsel and your legal counsel for this subcommittee. Lisa Patzer, who is our Zoom expert and running all the technology. And we have Kevin Bragg as well, who is happy to answer any questions that you may have, I'm sure. And that's who we have on the call today.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Aaron. Everybody, since we're at the beginning of holiday weekend, let's keep making progress here. So next up, subcommittee considerations. We have three agenda items here, starting with a review of the member survey. I would just thank those of you that participated in the survey. I think I'll ask Aaron to go through the results, but I think the results were pretty, it appears we're fairly spread out on many of these issues. And so hopefully today we can talk through some of these and get us to some form of alignment for a recommendation. So with that, Aaron, would you like to walk us through the survey results?
Yes, I can do that. Let me see, get on the right screen first before I share my screen so you guys don't see me fumbling around. Oh, that's probably good. All right. And this is the one. Oh, all right. So hopefully everybody can see I'm about to sneeze. Hopefully everybody can see the title page. So basically what I did, and again, and I will say thank you as well to everybody who submitted their comments on these surveys. I think they're very useful. And and thank you, Alan, as well for coming up with the questions. I did realize that I missed one of your questions, and I'll try to find it when you guys start talking. And so then hopefully that one can get addressed too, because I think it was an important one. But basically, the survey was to gather the views from this subcommittee just to help kind of start the conversation, see where there was some gaps, see maybe where there's already consensus, because you guys can start crafting your recommendation now. You've been on other subcommittees, so you know the urgency in starting to get these going. I don't anticipate that there will be a recommendation from this subcommittee to present to the June 8th full task force meeting. But if you want to maybe piecemeal it, you certainly can, or at least try to get the whole task force's consensus on some of the components of your recommendation. So we had 10 subcommittee members that responded to the survey. I think there's 18 in the group, so a little over half. Um, and so we'll just kind of go through this. So each one of these pages was its own question. So the very first one had to do with the scope of the review. So what elements of the license should be subject to the sunset review process? And there were several options to choose from, and you could choose as many as you wanted. So you can see the breakdown here. Pretty much everybody wants that responded to the survey, of course. Board practices and administration, the license as a whole, and then, all of them got pretty good scores, but, those were the two that were the highest. And then there was a tie for maybe also looking at CE requirements and reciprocity and interstate recognition. Obviously, you can see that the lowest scoring or the least popular were entry requirements and fee structures. So, but a holistic view is favored for sure, as well as the board setup. The next page or the next question had to do with the burden of proof. So who needs to justify their existence? Basically, this one was all over the place. So that'll be a good topic for you guys to discuss. But the most popular one, I guess. And it was this, yeah, choose one of the following. So you can only choose one. So 3 out of the 10, which again isn't, there was no majority here, but that the agency must prove that it's needed. So, or the program or the board or whoever show that the components, I guess, of the licensing requirements or whatever you're reviewing are actually needed. And then the other only other one that got more than one vote was more of a passive approach. Basically, everything is good, status quo, unless there is proof that something should be removed. I guess that's how I kind of read that one. The next one is the review structure. So, who should be doing the review? This is the big one, and this is where I would probably encourage this subcommittee to start your conversation, because there's a lot to it, and again, there was there was three people said an independent commissioner, outside reviewer, and then the other ones are an advisory committee and an agency or agency staff review, basically putting it on DLI. And then the other ones were just one. And I can't remember. I don't think so. Whoever said other, maybe they would be willing to explain the other because when I pulled the information for whatever reason, I didn't see the whole the comments. But this one I think would be a good one for you to start with as far as how is if you are going to do a recommendation, and again, you don't have to recommend this process, but that who's going to be responsible for it first, and then also consider when we are talking about an independent commissioner, outside reviewer, like who would that be? I know that when we talked about the other states' approaches. I provided examples of Colorado's the one that always springs to mind because they have an independent review um, agency. Their Office of Regulatory Affairs is the one that does these sunset reviews. So that's already set up. We don't have anything like that here in Montana, and so if it is to be an independent commissioner, outside reviewer, like you really need to think about who is that? Is it an entity that already exists because the legislative audit division was a separate bullet point on this one, and so it wouldn't be them. Is it who is it? Is it somebody that we would have to that the boards would have to pay for basically an outside audit type thing? So all those things I think you guys should talk about if this is the route you want to go, what the cost would be in setting that up versus an advisory committee that could be made up of existing divisions or agencies. The next one, oh, and then the last one is there was another one, and I will find it, is how often. So this also ran the gamut between 4 and 12 years. Great. So nobody wanted the outliers. Every 2 years is too soon or too frequent. Every 15 years is not frequent enough. But you could see then it was the 4 years or 12 years were the most popular ones. But again, I asked you to pick the top three, your top three choices. And so this isn't, it, I don't know what everyone's top choice is. And so hopefully you guys can have a good conversation about that as well. If you want to split the baby and do every 8 years. I would recommend as you go through not to do an odd number just because we have session every other year. So those were the 4 questions. And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, Chair Lloyd, just so I can go through and try to find that other question for you, and you guys can start your discussion. And then when it's convenient, I'll jump in and at least give the other question for you all to consider.
Thank you, Aaron. I'm gonna, much as you warned everybody last week. I'm at the end of a sinus infection, and so if I go on mute, it's probably because I'm coughing. Um, I think your recommendation to start with the who reviews is a wise one. The other thing, I think I was the other there, and if memory serves me correctly, my other there was just some sort of graduated process where if we decided to do something where there was an initial very high level evaluation that determined whether a board should or should not have a deeper review, that we potentially could have one group do an initial process to figure out whether that board should or should not like graduate onto more in-depth review. Um, I guess with that, like the question I would ask is, those of you that voted or participated in the survey versus those of you that didn't, anybody who'd like to share their reasoning on who should be performing the review.
Sorry, if I could interrupt, do you want me to pull the questions up again? Just so
Uh,
we can be looking at the same thing, or?
uh, that would probably be helpful. Yes.
Okay, I can do that, and then I will. Actually, I'm just going to do it this way because I found the other question. So I'll just share my screen, the screen. Um, so, Alan, when you guys get to a good point to talk about review versus termination, that was the question I accidentally left off the survey. Um, so which one are we doing? Oh, what type of body should conduct the review?
Correct.
Okay, perfect. So this, if everybody, can everybody see that? Okay,
Yes.
perfect.
I mean, I guess if nobody has strong feelings, well, I'll just you can just go with my answer since I'm the co-chair. That was a joke intended to get some of you to chime in on your thoughts here.
Hi, this is Sierra with the Behavioral Health Alliance of Montana. Um, I I probably would have, I'm open to more than just one. I think the thing that I wouldn't want is the licensing board itself to do its own review, but I would be open to other versions of some sort of independent or committee type of review.
Stacy?
Yeah, Stacy Anderson with the Primary Care Association. Sorry, a plane is flying overhead. Um, when I'm thinking about this, I think about the importance of having ex licensing expertise and then also probably the interest of our legislature to be involved. So I think about another version of an appointed task force that has both some like board chairs from existing licensing boards, legislative representation, agency representation. Um, yeah, something along those lines.
Standing. Senator Zolnikoff.
Thank you. I'd go with the legislative committee because you'd have to educate them anyway. They can study it, see if there's an issue there, and then push a bill forward. Public participation is required, so I think that's a pretty logical route to go.
Jen?
Hi, everyone. Jen Hensley. So I think that I'm approaching this from a different angle, which shouldn't surprise anyone, but I sort of see an opportunity for a two-tier approach. Um, the initial blush of, you know, does every X number of years, does a deep review need to occur? Are there flags that we see? What are some things that would be flags? And that should be, in my opinion, conducted by an independent auditor, preferably one we don't have to pay a lot of money for. So maybe the legislative audit, they are impartial, By nature, by makeup, they are well versed in the auditing science and best practices. If they then flag, then it can go to a deeper, more experienced group of individuals for that review. That's where my mind is going off the bat because often, and this is no shade to anyone with strong ties to any of these things, but if a group of appointed individuals or elected individuals or folks for whom it's their job to look for things is assigned to review and revise, often a review and revise is a foregone conclusion, even if it's not necessary, if that makes sense, right? So I think we're more likely to get change for change's sake if everything goes to a full expertise council versus having a tiered approach, like here are these large red flags. We see none. This industry has changed very little in, 20 to 40 years to 10, excuse me, the last decade, whatever. We don't see any red flags. We think it's fine. Versus there's been tremendous upheaval in this area, this policy area, this industry. And yeah, we think that this could benefit from a sifting through, and then we put those finer expertise eyes on it. So very long-winded. I apologize, but I'm not a multiple choice always gets me, always did. Thanks.
Thank you. Tanner.
Thanks, Chair Lloyd. I'm definitely open to a tiered approach. However, it's going to get into the specifics, and I would imagine our other questions are going to enlighten a little bit more of how I might feel about that. For example, if we do a tiered review and we have legislative audit division, which I would be more than happy to have them kind of do an initial review, but if we're putting the emphasis on them to say whether or not something then goes before the legislature to get reviewed, I'd have a little bit of an issue with that. I would be much more comfortable with having some sort of independent agency, whether it's legislative audit, as long as it's not a big fiscal note or something like that, that would review it and then present that to a legislative committee. I don't know if we need to create a new one or if we use an existing one, but allow, our elected officials to weigh in and say, hey, maybe we do need to bring this forward or not. That would kind of be my preference, I think.
Excellent. Thank you, Tanner. I'm just going to double tap kind of on what Jen and Tanner both said there and kind of go back to Senator Zolnikoff. I think it is important for us as we go through this process to remember at the end of the day, the legislators are the ones with kind of the ultimate responsibility here. And so I think, especially with a tiered approach, I would expect them to be, in that escalation, since they'd be the ones that would ultimately be responsible for implementing any change. Gail, I see your hand raised. And Gail, you are on mute.
Thank you. I'm interested in the agency staff review, and my primary reason for that is probably because I believe they would have the body of information, most likely have a significant amount of the information anyhow that would need to be reviewed in deciding whether to continue or to not continue with the licensing. And uh, I'm thinking that regardless of who we come up with, a legislative committee, an independent commission, maybe not so much, but an advisory committee, it will be placed upon the agency staff to compile the information they have to consider. So I think in my mind, the agency staff would be pretty involved regardless of who does the final review. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. This is good insights there. Uh, Senator Zolnikoff.
Thank you. One issue we ran into with the agency is they've been in gatekeeping control of many of the boards in the past. So that is the not okay, because we ran into the boards not realizing they should be making the decisions and they should be choosing what the discussion points is, and the agency in the past gotten a lot better, has been telling them what to do and trying to control basically these boards. So I'm really concerned about that. I think, again, back to legislative review, if you do, everybody gets half an hour every, for that selected boards that you're going to be hearing about for that review. There'd be a education. What is this board? What does it do? What are the qualifications? Why is this important? Is there anything we need to do? No. Okay, on to the next one. I don't think legislators are going to be digging up solutions to problems that no one's bringing up. Like if you look at any of our interim committees, almost there's very few interim bills popping out of them. So I don't think they're going to be like, oh, let's just change this entire process and spend the next year doing that, unless they're hearing problems. And the better part of it is A, legislators make laws, and B, we don't know what a lot of these boards are. So you'd be educating new legislators all the time on what these boards are, what's important, what are the standards, what do we have. Um, I think I think there's like a 4x value from that standpoint. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator Zolnikoff. Jen, your hand is still raised.
Yes.
Do you have more comment, or is that
I had a question.
excellent?
I wanted to clarify from Tanner. So Tanner, I just didn't catch it when you had the comment. Were you saying that lawmakers should be involved in the first or the second of the tiered approach that I was talking about? I just missed it.
I was saying that they should be involved, early on. What that might look like, we would probably have some discussions about.
Okay.
My biggest concern in saying that was I just don't want to see I wouldn't want to see a solution here, quote unquote solution, where we give it to a independent body and then they are the ones who decide whether to present that to the legislature or not.
Oh,
That's
okay.
I think that's my issue. I think we should let the legislature kind of hear that, hear both sides of it and then decide where to go.
Uh-huh.
So that's kind of my more thoughts.
I think that's a good point and a good clarification. Again, so in my mind, the way it would work is, um, audit would, audit and present to whichever, probably economic affairs interim committee, right? Because that's over Dolly, but perhaps we could also ask that specific policy committees be involved for the practice areas. So CFHHS for medical, et cetera. Um, and yeah, so my mind was they would for sure get the report out from audit, uh, either at the same time as the more detailed committee or, before. Because yeah, every 2 years, I mean, regardless of what the auditors come back with, the legislators always have the power to change it up anyway, right? Say, yeah, I know that audit came back with this, everything's fine. I disagree, and this is why, and here's my bill changing the world. So yeah, I think I agree with you on that one, Tanner, the way you just presented it. Because, information is power, and anytime you even appear to be, um, hiding the ball, folks are gonna think that there's something to hide. And this is not, I think that this is a, um, information gathering conversation. I don't know that this is the debate on a motion or whatever, but I would respectfully push back on Senator Zolnikov's statement that people, if asked about their opinion, need to change something rather than leave it lie. I think that that's a healthy approach, right? That no, if it's not broke, we're not going to fix it. But I see it. I see it a lot, and I do think there's potential for that. And when we're dealing with folks' entire livelihood and access to employment, the whims of a political wind are a dangerous thing to, allow into the room.
That's assuming that everything is done politically, and 98% of our interim discussions are not. So,
I no, I and I agree with you that it's assuming that. I think the assumption is that politics enters into it at some point, and I think that that's a fair thing to say. Not in every single situation. The interim committees are, but they're not 50-50. So it of course enters into it more so than when they were 50-50. So I think that that's a fair assessment that there's politics in many conversations in the policy arena.
on this one specifically, because of what we're talking about, are people going to just say, "Oh, let's just ban it," and all of a sudden bills will pop up and all the licensing standards will be gone? I mean, if I ran,
No,
I mean, I
I don't
get it
think
if
on
it's
this one specifically, to answer your, I don't think on this one specifically, right? But I think we would be naive to think that because it is something um, seemingly impartial and seemingly apolitical, that there wouldn't be entities at play to push it one way or the other.
so negative.
I no realistic.
I appreciate that discussion. I think it is a valid question and one, I mean, at some level, we are dealing with state law, and that is created by a legislature that is elected. And I think the question of politics is always there, but the representatives and senators are elected to represent their constituents, and if they do not do that correctly, they risk not being reelected. And so with that, I see Aaron's hand is raised.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to provide maybe a little more information for this discussion, or maybe a reminder. So it sounds like what what's really kind of being talked about is letting the legislative division or branch um, deal with this, and whether it is just with an interim committee or with audit and then an interim committee, that, you know, so that's kind of what I'm getting from it. But I wanted to just, I'm going to pull this over here. So you're just reminded that there is a process in statute now. It is optional, right? And Senator Noland, thankfully, is on the call, so he could talk a lot about this. Is the Economic Affairs Interim Committee's responsibility. And we went over this, I think, in the very first meeting, where basically there is an opportunity for the Economic Affairs Interim Committee to review every single board and program and advisory council and everything that's under its purview of any of the 10 agencies that it is responsible for oversight, every single interim. And this was put in place after, you could see, 2007. And so it was after that follow-up study, I guess it was, that I talked about in the Sunset History. But this was before there was that requirement, that study bill, where the Economic Affairs Interim Committee had to do the full sunset review on every single board. That was in 2011, I think. So anyways, this is something, if this committee wants to consider having it be an interim committee's responsibility, then you could tweak this statute and make it required, or put in a schedule of review or something like that for it. But this basically is an outline that's already in place that has some of the different criteria. So this is essentially a sunset review. It's just optional at this point in time. The other part that I wanted to just remind everybody, if you wanted to do a tiered approach, with having audit do the first pass on some basics, and then if it requires a further review, punted over to the Economic Affairs Committee, that would be kind of what is, again, already in place, if I can get back up to that spot of the revised sunset review, which is this. it would be this section. So this is what, and Angus, when he was at our meeting at the last time, he made mention that these statutes are currently under review. And so if you do want to go that route, I would really encourage a good collaboration with the audit committee and that data I don't remember the group's name, but basically whoever has asked audit to kind of look at this process. Because we don't want to put forward a recommendation that is completely conflicting what other committees are doing. And that's not useful. So that's what I wanted to share, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Aaron. I'm going to ask a somewhat of a related follow-up here. Um, as we think about that, the what I'm hearing from the group is some coalition around having an independent group gather the data for review by a group in the legislature. It's sounding as though we're leaning towards the audit staff providing an independent look into the licensing boards that is then presented to Economic Affairs Interim Committee for them to um, both learn about the boards which they have oversight of, and then also to have a bite at the apple to make any changes that might be needed. I think I'm open to thoughts, but I think the next question that makes sense in my head is to move over and discuss what exactly needs to be reviewed. Um, and so if we are asking legislative audit to do this initial, independent look, what are they actually looking at? I think that's the next question that pops into my head. Any objection from the group to moving on to that subject? Senator Noland?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Um, Aaron probably knows this, and Senator Zolnikoff as well. One of the issues that I have had and have commented, and I think everybody on this committee, of course, I'm on all these committees, but um, I want everybody to have to stand up and say why they need to be in existence. And I think I shared this before, so that they see that they're relevant. They see after they go through the steps of why they have to prove to the legislature that they need to be this board or this. Before you move on to this next thing, Mr. Chairman, that's what I wanted to chime in here. That it helps them do their own due diligence. It helps them say, okay, the legislation, because we can wipe everything out, which that's never an intent of any. I don't think any legislature to do, but this is all your board's done. This entity's done. You're not going to get a license. This is done. That's not our intent. Our intent is to have people focus on what are they relevant? Are they doing anything that's productive? Are they doing things to enhance this citizenry in the state of Montana having good access to everything that they do? Why are boards set up? So if they do an evaluation, that's my word, then they can, if their group can all say, oh yeah, this is good. This might be helpful. And that's what I'm hoping for. I want them to do some work so that we can say, okay, yes, you are relevant, because they all are relevant. Hopefully if people are listening that thought I was saying that they're not, I didn't mean that, but I also want them to know and be engaged, because we get to hear all these things in my committee, and I'm happy to do that. But I also want them to do their due diligence of what is the purpose for what they're doing. So all these discussions that we're having, hopefully it can get out to all the folks so that they can see our intent is to have them feel relevant, but be relevant in doing things that are moving the needle in the right direction. So all these good discussions All these comments are good, and we need to keep having these. But that was the intent of some of my discussion that Aaron and Mr. Zolnikoff and a few others have had, because we want this to be in a productive uh, process. And with the governor asking for us to pull this together and look at everything to see, what is needed, that's really good. And you all realize it ultimately comes to us. And we're not the kings, but we are the ones that have to make the tough decisions. So I just wanted people to realize you do have a place, you do have a say. This is one of the ways to do it. We might not agree on everything, but it's a great, great step. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, Senator Nolan, I think my reaction to your comment is that I think you are correctly identifying the role of two very important groups in this process. The licensing boards themselves. There is a need to look in the mirror and to make sure that you're remaining relevant. And then from the legislator's standpoint, again, you're the ones that, create these things and have oversight over them. And so I believe your responsibility is to ensure that, if boards are not relevant, that action is taken. And so I appreciate your comments, and I think they're touching on a critical aspect of this for us to understand. I'd also mention that I think it's a good segue into talking about, what we review, because I feel like that relevance is probably the top line thing. Um, you know, it's the first option here, the license as a whole, whether the license category should continue to exist at all. Um, I know that question or that option feels a bit scary for some, but I think that is a valid question and one that we should be asking. And if a licensing board cannot, communicate, why it should continue to exist, that to me is a bit frightening. So again, this is one where looking at the survey results, I think there are, two front runners here. Whether the license category should continue to exist at all, I think that is what Senator Nolan was just touching on. And then the second one there is, or I guess first place was how the board operates in practice, the practices in administration. And I will chime in with Alan's personal thoughts here. I think the report that the department submits to the governor is probably too high level in how it covers administration. I would my personal opinion is that report is a show of activity, not necessarily performance. And so I guess I would open the floor to folks that have thoughts in this area on each of these topics, what is most important. And the other question I would ask is how may we recommend that each of these be tackled if they are included in the process? Feel like I have to keep going to threads here.
Ellen, this is Jen.
Yes, Jen.
Would you please repeat specifically what you're asking for?
At this point, asking for thoughts in this area. Where is the group on what the scope of review should be, and then any thoughts on how these things could be operationalized. So I guess, we'll start if licensure as a whole is the question, how would one want that to be evaluated? John. And John, you are muted.
Sorry, I'm traveling today. We just got to Lincoln, so back in service. And my thoughts as Senator Nolan's comments as far as licensure as a whole, I think we're headed in the right direction for sure. As far as the licensing, the requirements that you were just talking about, you would think that it's almost one in the same as the licensure as a whole. Is the the licensing program itself would be responsible to produce a document or information to a review board that would um, kind of declare their reason for existence. It would seem that it would come from that particular licensing board and then be subject to review after that.
Tanner?
Thank you. I have a couple thoughts here. One, I'd be curious to see if anyone who selected board practices and administration would want to kind of explain what their thinking was. I was trying to conceptualize what that might look like, and I had a couple ideas, but I'd love to hear someone's perspective who think that's the most important or one of the most important. My second thing I was going to say is I think the license as a whole is a really good place to go. I think it captures all of these things. There aren't boards if there's not a license. Not to say that we should do that or anything like that, but just kind of pointing out the obvious there. The other one is, the requirements for the license. I think would be a good area to tackle when we look at states' regulations around licensing. There's quite a bit of differences. Some other states have less requirements, but more licenses. Montana kind of falls in the middle of the pack from the last time that I looked. So I think it would be good to look at the requirements and see what those might be like to see if we need to get rid of some of those. I'd also say that there could be a tiered approach to this where I'm sure there would be some negotiations of what this would look like, but we could say, hey, this area should get an automatic sunset per se, and then unless it's renewed, and then other aspects we're not going to sunset. It should just be a review. I think there should be we could have some conversations of what that might look like too.
Jen, I see your hand raised.
Thank you. To answer your question, Alan, I think the question that should be answered from the initial licensure standpoint, if we were to go that way, should be a pretty low bar. I mean, to ask people to justify their existence requires a heavy lift. And therefore, the question should be, does licensing this occupation continue to protect the public health, safety, and welfare by requiring individuals have necessary qualifications to work in these professions? Or, on the contrary, is there potential for the public health, safety, and welfare to be compromised or licensure barriers removed completely? And I think that's a fairly straightforward question. And if it's yes, then they need to continue to exist. And therefore, in my opinion, my policymaking brain, the impetus would fall to those who seek to dismantle them. This is why they should be dismantled. These are specific examples of how it has been unnecessary. This whole industry has changed, and therefore this is protectionism or this is fencing. However, to ask the people who are actually doing the work day to day, who are doing the number gathering and the licensure and the testing and the actual performing of these professions, plus reporting in how they're performing the professions, to ask them to do yet another thing, I think is bold on our part. I think it would be very burdensome to those who are actually doing the work in the field to satisfy an urge of a group of people. I think the bar should be low.
Thank you, Jen. Tanner, I see your hand back up.
Yeah, I think, I understand where you're coming from, Jen. I just wanted to respond to that a little bit and give a differing perspective. And that would be, obviously there's different views on the role of regulation, especially in a free society like the one that we live in. And I definitely think there's a role for regulations. I think there's a role for licensing. However, I think that the train of thought that says that um, if there's a regulation, then it's good, which is not exactly what you're saying, but I do think that, the corollary here I would use would be like seatbelts, or even better, actually, would be um, speed limits. We know that if we lower speed limits, it saves, it can save a life or two. And there is a bit of a bell curve there, which is, a really, really hard conversation. And it's why we have elected officials that look into these issues. But I don't think that we should say, I don't know if it's the most useful to use hyperbole that we're going to say people's exact existence are going to be threatened by this. I understand where you're coming from, but I do think this is a tool that we could use to kind of balance the need for regulation while also saying that regulation can sometimes go over the top.
Right. No, and I agree with you, Tanner. I think it is a balance. I If I said existence, that's not what I should have said. It's their profession, it's their ability to earn. And so because I directly work with so many of those people who are actually out there practicing their craft on a day-to-day basis, I'm very aware of how many things unrelated to their craft they're required to do because we want to make sure that they're doing what they need to be doing. And so, in my mind, burdening them with proving their existence every so often is another burden when we have that ability anyway. Every 2 years, any legislator can bring a bill abolishing the board of whatever, and those folks would have to come in and prove why they should continue to exist, right? And so we already have that outlet by 150 individuals whose only job is to improve their communities. And so I just don't think we have to codify it again somewhere, is what I'm saying.
Senator Nolan.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I lost my screen and I'm having bad internet at home. But anyway, to some of Jen's points, what I'm looking for, now granted, this isn't everybody, this is me. We want, and I don't see the thing that's bad about every so often, and that's why on the sunset side issues, that we have everybody have a chance to come in and do. Is it burdensome? Might be a little bit. Which one of us isn't burdened on almost every day of our lives doing something?
I'm burdened everywhere, Mr. Knoll.
Well, that's your choice to take on all these responsibilities that you do, and then you enlighten us so much and so well. So I do appreciate that. But when we come to these, here's a chance for everybody to say, and maybe we'll discuss in either, I don't know which committee this falls under. Maybe it'll only be every 6 years or 10 years. So it's not a burden all the time. But as legislators, when we hear a lot of these issues and they come back and forth, and then it keeps coming back, and well, why are they in existence? Why is it necessary? Why is it needed? And I've been tasked by a lot of folks to say, you guys need to get a handle on this. The governor heard, we put forth this program that we're doing right now to let everybody have a say. I'd still like to do zero-based budgeting. Now, that's not the phrase for this basic concept, but then that shows people, and does everybody have to get engaged? No, but they can pinpoint who's going to be the spokesperson, who can do this. So there's a logistic way to do this without burdening every single person. However, if it's your livelihood, I think you ought to spend that extra effort. And I'm not interested. I don't really want to burden people too much. I chose to put in my $15, and I have a burden there too, to represent everybody. But I think they need to. So back to your comment of, or we're stressing them out, basically. We might be. You didn't say that. I'm saying that. I think it needs to be done. I think we need to go to the level, and maybe we'll decide it doesn't need to be very often. The sunsetting issue, that when it comes up, we can task that to whatever we all decide. But then remember, it still has to pass. The legislation still has to pick it up. Somebody has to carry it. And if I say it's a big bunch of BS, that Daniel can say Senator Nolan's wrong. We need to do this, and that's a talking point. So anyway, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Nolan. Senator Zolnikoff.
I was just gonna say political reality is having the sunset become law. Probably pretty low because Jen will have her clients and all members show up to kill the bill. And after last session, I don't think there's a political will to push back to that could remove licensing. So I think a review is probably just the logical way to go. So that's just, if we want to move forward, that's what I would suggest.
Excellent. Aaron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, committee members. So I think one thing I will ask is maybe some instructions along the way for what you would like me to prepare for the next meeting. But I would, just based on what I've been hearing, can come up with some options to maybe use some of these more info gathering elements in this scope of review for the first tier. And then the actual review, like license as a whole, we can come up with some pointed questions. That was what was in the original sunset laws, and that's what's in a lot of other sunset laws is, kind of looking at the data and then answering this question, and that could be the scope of the second review, the interim committee review. So I'm happy to kind of work up some options for you to consider as far as how that could look. And then again, to Senator Zolnikoff's point, if it's a review period versus a hard this board is gone and this license is gone unless. So if that works for everybody, I can start coming up with some suggestions.
Any objections from the group to that approach? I think the other thing that I would just highlight from the discussion here is I think having a schedule of review to a couple of your points, it puts it on the calendar and it gives everybody involved a level of an awareness. Not that the legislature can't come in independent of this and take action, but it would give some level of comfort both to those that are supportive of the license, knowing when the actual review is scheduled, and then also for the legislators, giving them some level of comfort that their oversight is being done on this regular schedule, and so that could lessen the need or likelihood for them to act independent of the process. I say all of this just as someone who has opposed every tax credit for the past 3 sessions. The tax credit review process creates an opportunity for each of the credits to have a similar level of review, which then has resulted in less fiddling with those in between when the review isn't scheduled. And so I think just that aspect of having a schedule creates some certainty for everybody involved that has benefits. I think that leaves us with 2 questions from the survey that we have not discussed. The burden of proof and how often. I guess burden of proof is in front of us. I think the most popular answer here is agency must prove it's needed. Um, I would open the floor to thoughts and questions. I would also highlight that the the responses are spread fairly evenly on this one. Anybody have a strong feeling on the option they selected that they'd like to share their thoughts? Tanner?
Thank you. Actually, I have a question that might spark some conversation to see if there is maybe a middle ground here. Jen, I think you and I are um, maybe on little different sides of this for a couple of reasons here. But I wanted to ask you, Jen, because you represent kind of the other view that we have to, really negotiate with and see if we can come up with a good product that isn't just going to be a one-sided thing. And that would be, how would you feel? And you might say you completely hate this, so that's totally fine. But how would you feel about not sunsetting, having an automatic sunset for a license? We keep the license. We have a review process for the license, but we have maybe an automatic sunset for some part of the license, such as requirements to get it or something like that. Does that seem a little bit more tenable or still something you're just like not about?
I don't know if I understand what you're suggesting really. I mean I understand the words that you're saying, but can you give me an example other than requirements to get it? I don't understand what would be sunset, so I don't know.
Fair enough. I would say this. So, the when the review happens, the requirements say that, the burden would basically be they'd have to, come and kind of justify themselves, but it's not like the license has to be reauthorized through legislation to continue to exist. So that would remove the actual sunset. It would be review. It wouldn't be a sunset. We call it a sunset review, but it would be just a review of the license, however many years it might be, as opposed to a sunset, which would get rid of the thing entirely. So the example would be, let's say, a requirement for good, moral behavior or something like that, where we would say, okay, we're going to sunset that requirement to get a license um, after, and it has to be renewed through the legislature to continue to exist. Does that make more sense? I'm not sure if I'm being the most.
I think it makes more I think I understand now what you're asking. And I think fundamentally and ideologically disagree with that approach. I think it would just be really, really complicated. I think it would be very easy to blur the lines and make it gray. And as speaking from the perspective of someone who it knows that the grayer you can make a bill, the better chance it has to die, that I think that it would just set it up for manipulation. Um, and by that I mean not in a nefarious way. I think that even if I agreed that yes, this needs to go away from this license type, um, if somebody brought a bill to make it reviewed every so often, I could just argue that that fell under a different category and therefore is not subject to the sunset. I just think it would be far too complicated a system to efficiently carry out what the legislature needs to do in a very short amount of time. Like, what is the name? What are those machines that you go from point A to point B in the most complex manner? There's a name for it, and I can never remember what it
Rube
is.
Goldberg.
Thank you. Yeah, it feels like approaching there, right, and creating that complexity. Um, that would be my two bets. Of course, like 20 seconds after your suggestion and just understanding it, I'm open to more conversation around this. Um, but that's where my gut is telling me to go.
Okay, well, thank you for the feedback.
Tanner, I'd kind of add to what Jen was saying with just one concept there, and that is I think that requirement of action from the legislature to keep something is always there's always the risk that then the bigger political issues get rolled into that, and we've seen where, big issues come before the legislature and suck the air out of everything else. And the concern I personally would have there is that inadvertently, some aspect that is important to a license got wrapped up in one of these, bigger debates, and wasn't given enough time to, adequately be discussed. And I think it's just something that, um, through unluck of the draw of which session a license, was sunsetting, you could run into this problem. And I'll use a practical example here. Um, I think 2 sessions ago, for those of you that are not aware, the CPA licensing board is the only licensing board that has an enterprise fund. And so the money that comes in and goes out for CPAs is not part of the fund for the other licenses. We have our own fund. And that piece of legislation always carried a sunset, and we removed that sunset, I think, 2 sessions ago, purely because it was something that there was very little pushback to it, but it was something that just had to happen every few sessions. And through discussion, we were able to come to agreement that just removing the sunset just prevented the need for a hearing on something that there was general consensus around. Um, I think the other thing that I would just throw in there is like the opposite is always an option. And so any legislator can bring, a bill at any point to remove any aspect of this. And so I think my fear with requiring action to maintain status quo is that just some other outside factor impacts that negatively. Other thoughts from the group? I saw that Senator Zolnikoff raised a hand and lowered his hand. Maybe we addressed this issue, maybe not.
I was going to just suggest, thank you, Alan, that Jen and Tanner meet up and discuss these things and try to find some common ground. Save us a lot of time.
Senator Zolnikoff, you're invited.
All right, have it happen in Billings then.
Uh, Other thoughts from the group? Does anybody else have a strong feeling based on the conversations that have just taken place? Hearing none, I would offer that we go to our final question, which I think is the how often. I'll share my personal responses were 12, 10, and 8 with a strong preference for 10. Um, I don't know if other folks would be open or willing to sharing their thought process on this question, um, or if you have a very strong favorite horse in this race. Gail. Gail, you are muted.
I think that the schedule will be impacted somewhat by the terms of the review and the scope of the review. Uh, if it's not so significant, it could be more often. But I think if the review is extensive, that it should be fewer years, just in terms of the amount of work that's involved in it. And I think one thing for us to consider of who does the review, if it can be done within the existing frameworks that we now have, maybe the audit division or some body, but if we have very frequent reviews and they're extensive, I think that we are leaning towards having to develop something like Colorado has. So I'm more in favor of the higher number of years, 10, 12, something like that. and to look carefully at what the scope of the review is. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Webb, your hand is raised. And you're muted.
That's weird. I unmuted to start with. So thanks, Chair Lloyd. I go for the 10 years. And if there is some, outstanding reason that needs to be addressed in between that, nothing precludes the legislature or anyone else from starting a process to review it more often. But make it automatic for 10 years and then go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Webb. Other thoughts from the group? Tanner?
I would just second what everyone else has said so far. I think we can spread this out a little bit, have it be a little less burdensome so it doesn't just disappear in the next session, but also something that is meaningful we can come back to and see what's changed over the last 10 years or so.
Thank you. Senator Zolnikoff.
Yeah, I think I was probably a 6 year, so 8. I think if you do a few every session, if say again in my vision, you come back and have a legislative review, they go through it on a day or two. You do a quarter of them every time, no problem, no issue. You educate some people. We know what that board does and how it works, and yeah, I think you can get that'd be a good enough process. So I'd do 6 or 8 years.
Thank you. Just in the chat, I see Jen says 10 for me, 12 actually. I like that. And then Senator Zolnikoff, 6 for me or 4 actually. I like this actually math. And Stacy says 8 to 10 is reasonable if all at once. Senator Nolan.
On my mute button. So I know we want stability. People want to have something, I don't want to say hang their hat on, but they know, okay, put this to bed for 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 years. They can rely on it. It's going to be here. However, y'all kind of know where I'm at. So I'm under the probably 6 to 8 years. Granted, you guys are dealing with legislators. So what Senator Zolnikoff commented, I concur and agree with. And I know a lot of you aren't going to, but anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. One thing that I would just highlight process-wise that we learned from earlier meetings is that if we get too aggressive, this could become something that isn't sustainable. The other thought that pops into my head as we're having this discussion is that it is possible that the correct answer is to do a first round with a slightly longer tail, just because going through the process the first time for a board is probably going to be a bit more labor intensive, and then that frequency may make sense to speed it up once some of the base work has been done that would likely be similar in future years. Senator Noland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know we don't want to scare people. I know we don't want to burden people. That's all good and fine. One of my issues is, and it has always been, the ethics issue. And have people addressed that? And if they have that addressed and there's hardly any issues come up, and those are some of the things that I get in our committee. This happened, we had to discipline this person, and it doesn't happen very often, thank goodness. But if the boards have that policy in place, and it's a strong one, and this is what the recommendations are, and this is what we're saying, but then they never meet. So that comes back to who's watching and who's minimizing the problems. And I keep hearing, sometimes I keep hearing the same issues. I go, well, nobody's doing it. So I'd love to see that part addressed so that people can say, oh, we addressed that. This is the penalty, or this is what can happen. Um, then maybe we could go fewer years or more longer years. But in my mind, I'm not seeing that. Some of you have witnessed those issues that I'm specifically addressing. And does it roll over into other people's areas? Some of it does, but some are specific and there are problems. And so I want those boards, I'm encouraging those boards to step up and realize, we're trying to do the best we can as legislators with all the information we can. So I think we need to have the CPAs do all the audits, and they have to do everything because they use a fine tooth comb on everything and nitpick everything and scrutinize everything and make my life not very pleasant, but that's okay. I'm just kidding, Chairman. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Senator Nolan. I think my only follow-up to that would be to just ask you and the group to think about what the appropriate metric would be to capture that. And so if there are boards that are having issues that deal with ethical complaints, what would be a metric that this process could use and capture to provide that data? I would agree. I think just from a CPA standpoint, I know that most of our ethical issues that get brought to a board level run into the issue of there also being legal action, and those two processes running concurrently sometimes slow the process down and create frustration for all involved. Um, Jen.
Thanks. This is, I don't think we're going to answer this question today, but I was just thinking when you mentioned the CPAs knowing how expensive you guys are, um, who, when we ask Ledge Audit to do this task, I'm going to assume that somewhere on the bookkeeping rolls, there will be a bill to Department of Labor and Industry, or perhaps the board itself, and then we have to figure out a funding source, right? And I think that maybe should be discussed a little bit. I know that it is not our responsibility to figure out a funding source for this, but am I correct in that assumption that we're going to have to compensate Ledge Audit for doing this work? In fact, we should probably get an estimate of what that would look like, or I don't know. I'm just trying to think of the connection between policy and dollars.
Aaron, I see your hand raised. I hope you're raising it to give us an answer.
Yes, thank you. I'll rely on my legal counsel as well to back me up on this, because I know that Jen deals with some audits with legislative audit. You absolutely need to consider the cost with all of this. And so that was what I was trying to express in the beginning when I mentioned how the most popular response for I'm going to stop sharing. Oops. For a independent review commission is that was the most popular choice, but there is nothing that exists. And so if it's going to be an external audit, somebody has to pay for it. And so that needs to be built into the recommendation. If it's the licensing board that has to pay for it, or the department, all of that is very necessary. And if this turns into a bill, an actual bill, then clearly there will be a fiscal note involved. From what I understand, legislative audit, they have their own budget for the work that they do that is within their authority per statute. And so I think if this was put into statute and there was the responsibility of the of legislative audit, that would be incorporated within their budget. Now, I don't know, and Jennifer, this is where I'm going to ask you to chime in when I'm done talking, is I don't know if they actually bill, because that is their responsibility, is to audit the agencies and programs and all of that kind of stuff. And so they have their budget for that. There was something else I was going to say, and I totally forgot what it was, but please do consider the cost. Oh, the other thing is, if it's going to be I can't remember who said this in the beginning, but maybe some of the preparatory work could be the agency to do it. There's a cost associated with that. We have FTE. We are all very busy. I'm not saying that we wouldn't do it, but if that's an additional duty or additional FTE that would need to be hired to to cover that kind of review or prep work, then we would need to include that in the analysis and in the fiscal note at the end of the day. Jennifer, can you speak a little bit more about cost?
I can. I actually don't know about Ledge Audit passing the cost along to the department, but am doing some digging right now. Otherwise, the cost of responding to the audit, to providing information, staff time, to assist the auditors in doing their work, that all gets direct billed to the board at issue, and those costs would get passed along to the licensees who, as Alan pointed out, pay the costs of operating the boards, with the exception of the accountants who manage their own fund. Everybody else is part of the appropriation, and those costs are billed. I don't think that Ledge Audit bills us, but I'm happy we can get that information and get back to you.
Before I go to Senator Zolnikoff, the only other thing that I would mention, just because I heard it from Commissioner Swanson earlier in a hearing this week, is that these activities are not general fund activities. The work that's done here is funded by the license fees, and so this is not an issue of taxpayer dollars going to pay for this. This would be I'm going to use the word self-funded, but funded through the fees that are charged to those that have the licenses. So with that, Senator Zolnikoff.
I got distracted. What were we talking about again? Licensing?
The general topic at the moment is legislative audit,
Oh, right. Thank
who
you.
pays,
Yes,
who charges.
you got it. You nailed it. Yeah, this isn't the role of ledge audit. So can we just take that off the map? Because they audit, and if you're saying, hey, is there a better way to do this or not, or should they be doing this or not? Like, that's not what they do. They look at if something's right or wrong, I believe, and if procedures are being followed, if money's being spent the right way. So again, you mandate it for the legislature to review it. They already have to do these meetings. They're already budgeted for. The fiscal notes, 0 attendees can choose whether to participate or not. Makes the fiscal issue a lot lower. So, and we have a lot of reviews and a lot of things that legislative interim committees have to do. So it's already normal to mandate we do stuff from ourselves.
Excellent. Jen, I see your hand is raised.
Did we, I don't think that I was cognizant if we made the decision that Ledge Interim would be the ones doing the actual review of. In my brain, the Ledge Audit would be the first tier. Like, this is what's happening. These are some potential red flags. And then it would go to a separate committee where both legislators and the practitioner brains were there, and folks like you and me, butchers, bakers, candlestick makers, were at the table talking about that specific board. Concurrently, it would be presented to the interim committee, which could always take action on it. But in my mind, it wasn't tasking the interim committee with it. I don't know if I'm being clear on it, but that was my understanding of it. At least that would be my hope for it. That the ledge audit be the primary tier. And I only am saying ledge audit because I'm unaware of something more cost effective that could do this that is equally as nonpartisan. So I'm open to suggestions. I think that's why I keep saying ledge audit.
Ledge audit audits, they don't like choose policy decisions if we need to increase or lower these standards. So
yeah, I think we're saying the same thing. Because in my mind, they would audit, say, just as they do with the agencies or just as they do with the programs, this is what they do. These are the people we talk to. These are potential red flags. And even for agencies, they suggest corrective whatevers, right? I don't even think that they should have to do that for this. I think that they should say, based on the criteria we were given, these are potential red flags and do with that what you will. I truly do think it's a cursory audit. And then if red flags are raised, then dig deeper.
I guess my reaction would be twofold. First, I would say that I do not believe that we've made any decisions today, but I do feel as though we have narrowed options in a way that Aaron will be able to present us with things at our next meeting to make some of these decisions. The other thing that I would, since we're sharing each of our understandings, when I've thought about this first level and legislative audit, I had not put any determination of good or bad on anything. And in my head, one of the things that this group should do is come up with what the metrics are and then have somebody independent report those metrics, and then the decisions being made are going to be made by the legislators. And so if we could bring that information that they can trust so that they can make an informed decision, I think, again, in Alan's head, that's kind of an ideal process. I'm also feeling just kind of Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, and if you need more, but I feel as though we've gone through kind of the high level topics that we need to make some decisions on, and I hope that you will be able to go back and watch this riveting meeting and come up with, some options for us to actually make decisions on as we move forward. The other question that Alan as chair has is we had another material that was included for this meeting, and I don't believe we've discussed it. And I wondered, Aaron, if you would like to explain that document as well.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And then, yeah, before we go on to that paper, I will just say, so this is what I've heard and kind of relate it to what past practice has been, is that there kind of was a two-tiered approach in the past in that the audit division, which is the nonpartisan staff for the legislature, they were asked to do what's called a performance audit, right? So there's three types of audits that they do. They do performance audits, compliance audits, and then also financial audits. So this was a performance audit, so it dealt with the actual programming. And then they presented that in, they did have some, not, I guess, Alan, you were calling them red flags, or somebody was, but recommendations, potential recommendations, or just I can't remember what they're called now. They're takeaways basically. And then it was the audit committee, the legislative audit committee, which is made up purely of legislators, that decided whether or not they should move forward with anything. So it was a two-tiered approach. It was strictly within audit. What I hear you guys are saying is that you'd rather have it be more of the interim committees like economic affairs. They already have the ability to do this on an optional basis, but make it more of a structured review process. And somebody should present the information. So do kind of, and there's also what's called a limited scope audit. And that's really where I kind of see this playing in, is that if whatever type of review, you could call it an audit, that's just the umbrella term for it, but it's really more of a coming up with the information, the data points for the review committee to evaluate, and at that point have the hearing and everything like that. So a lot of what you're talking about is what was done in the 70s. It was a very, very fast thing. It was pretty detailed. And so that's really what I think, and I can come up with some different ideas for you all to decide, like, what elements of, I'm not sharing my screen anymore, what elements of that scope of review should be, the information gathering portion of it, and then what elements should be um, the review committee's portion of it. And one thing that I will say that's kind of it's something that struck me is that the department is actually doing some variation of this right now with some of our Practice Act reviews. And so we are reviewing, we do kind of a regular review of each of the individual Practice Acts or the individual chapters within Title 37, and work with the board and work with external stakeholders. We're doing a handful of them right now that really kind of go through and answer a lot of these questions. Are these provisions necessary? Are these qualifications necessary? Have things changed as far as exam procedures or whatever it is? And the board really helps identify a lot of that information. And then we're coming up with some updates to these practice acts to help modernize the language and reduce barriers and all of that kind of stuff. And so that is. So maybe this could be framed as more of, instead of a sunset review, a practice act review, and just a systematic approach of going through each of the occupations, each of the boards, and finding ways to improve if there are, but just having it be more of a practice act review than a oh, if we don't get this report done, then this board's out of here. So I will come up with some options for you. I'll do all of that work in preparation for the next meeting, based on everything that you all said today. And then I'll go ahead and I just wanted to point out, and if you've been at any of the meetings the last couple of weeks, you've seen this same thing. So this is my shameless plug for this paper that I wrote. But I was asked to come up with a policy paper in preparation for this task force, that is really about barriers to entry and all of that. And so I am providing it to every subcommittee. And so if you're only on one, then you'll only get it once. If you're on all four, like a lot of you, then you'll get it 4 times. But this was, I believe, is this the document you just wanted me to cover quickly, Alan? Okay. So this was done last year, but basically what this is it's just an examination on licensing challenges and strategies. And particular to this committee, there's a pretty good portion about sunrise and sunset reviews in here. And so if you haven't had a chance to take a look at this, please do. Don't be intimidated by the fact that it's 80 pages, because you can see that it's really only 30. There's a lot of charts and graphs and white space in here. I did my best, as from what I could learn, about how to or just read the executive summary, I guess. But you'll see in here that there's some history on licensing, and then some different categories of barriers, of pros and cons for it, and all of that kind of stuff. But then and then there's some, information on a lot of research that's already been done on barriers. And but there is, oh, and then strategies. And so it kind of goes into like the types of barriers, and then some just potential strategies. And this is all, there are no recommendations in here. But there's, just a bunch of different strategies. And so this task force is really addressing a lot of, but the sunset, oh, okay, where am I at? The sunrise and sunset, you can see, starts on page 18. So a lot of this information was given in presentation form, but now you have it in a paper. And then and here's some of these criteria that you can consider. And again, I've pretty much presented a lot of this for you already. But then if you want, for resources, down at the very end, I think it's the last 2 appendixes. Yes. So Appendix G talks about all the different types of entities that provide review and oversight, and then kind of some examples of states that do different things. And you'll see that there's links to sources as well. And then also in Appendix H, if you want to actually see the statutes, then I have provided all of those for you as well. So one thing that is really good, and I think I mentioned this in one of my presentations, but the Council of State Governments, or CSG, they put together a book of states. It's a huge data database. They have, as it hasn't been updated since 2023, but pretty recent, I guess, a summary of sunset legislation. So you can go in, and it's just a huge like Excel sheet type thing. But it's a really useful database, because you can actually, if you go into the book of states, you can they have all the historical ones as well. So you can even get the 1977 Book of States that talks about when Montana enacted their sunset reviews. So really good resources in there. Is that good?
That is perfect.
Okay.
Having
And
not
thank
been
you to
on
anybody
another,
who's actually read it. I appreciate it.
you got at least one.
Thank you.
With that, I think that takes us to its outstanding issues, identifying further issues and instructions to staff. I guess I would say that we've kind of accomplished some of that instructions to staff, but I wouldn't limit it if folks have other things that they would like to ask or recommend, or if there are other issues that we have not yet addressed that you would like added to our docket. All right, hearing none. Next meeting, we have a meeting Friday, June 19th, again at 9 a.m. Look forward to seeing everybody there. And then July 31st is the other meeting that we have scheduled. Before we go to public comment, I will just ask if there's anything else anybody would like to add. All right, seeing none, I am going to read. The subcommittee now offers the public in attendance an opportunity to comment on any public matter under the jurisdiction of the subcommittee that is not on the current agenda. The subcommittee cannot act, but will listen to comments and may ask staff to place the issue on a future agenda. The chair may limit the comment period to proceed with the subcommittee meeting. That I'll hand it over to the staff to take care of our public comment portion.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. If anybody in attendance would like to provide public comment, please raise your hand. I don't see anybody.
Outstanding. I will say, I think it's been noted in other meetings that having these on Friday is sometimes limited participation, but I appreciate everybody being engaged and sharing today. And with that, we don't move to adjourn, but I would happily end the meeting so we can start our long weekend. Hopefully everybody has wonderful plans.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Thank
Alan. Thanks,
you.
Aaron.